This is the crazy story of how an orphan college dropout bought a pizza shop for just $500 and transformed it into one of the most successful food chains of all time, only to jeopardize it all shortly after with his extreme religious views and a ton of messy lawsuits. But despite its questionable political affiliations, the brand survived and even went on to make an epic comeback, which is studied by marketing majors all across the globe today. This is a story that includes multi-million-dollar court cases, car accidents, and even a hostage situation. A story marked by vision, innovation, scandal, and blind ambition. It's the rise and fall, and rise again, of Domino's Pizza. So, they're these two brothers. Let's call them Tom and James Monaghan, because those are their actual names. For reasons that will become clear, we're mostly going to focus on Tom here. You see, when Tom was just 4 years old, his father died, and his mother abandoned him, leaving the brothers to be raised by nuns in a Catholic orphanage where lunchtime suffered from a cruel lack of pizza. Tom spent most of his childhood being passed around different foster homes and schools, even doing child labor on a farm at one point. As you can see, we're not off to a great start here. When he was a teenager, he went back to live with his mother, but it wasn't long before she had him locked up in a juvenile detention center. Thanks, Mom. Now, despite his difficult childhood and graduating last in his high school class, Tom had big dreams of being rich. So, he enrolls in the University of Michigan to study architecture, which, as you know, has absolutely nothing to do with pizza. Anyway, he drops out after just one semester because he couldn't even afford the books. Eventually, the 60s come along. Music is awesome, anyone can buy a house for the price of a pair of underpants, and life is pretty good. After a stint in the Marines, he manages to save up to $2,000 to give college a second shot. He thought he was on his way. But of course, our friend Tom falls victim to a get-rich-quick scheme and handed over all his money to a scam artist who left him with just $15 to his name. Frustrated, discouraged, and most of all broke, Tom found himself delivering newspapers, slowly saving up for a better life. That was until his brother Jim came to him one day with an idea that would change everything. You see, Jim was working as a postman, but he waited tables in a local pizza restaurant on the side for some extra cash. This was how he came to know about another restaurant his boss owned called Domino's, which had been boarded up for years. The brothers scraped together $500 and bought the place, borrowing an additional $900 to get set up. Not a bad deal, all things considered. What they lacked in experience, they made up for with their appetite for success. Tom took what he learned on the newspaper stand and started to apply it to his new business. You see, he quickly realized that if you're selling papers at a stand, you have to wait for the people to come to you. But if you deliver the papers, you can sell 3 times as much. It was a no-brainer to do the same for pizza, and Domino's became the first pizza delivery service in the city. Things were finally looking up for Tom, but his brother was starting to get cold feet. Just 8 months into working together, James decides he's not into this whole pizza thing. Classic James. So he does something that, we can imagine, he went on to regret for the rest of his life. He sold his share of the business to Tom for a used Volkswagen Beetle. Now, while James may or may not regret his decision, maybe things wouldn't have turned out so well if he stayed. With James out, Tom now had free reign to do anything he wanted with the business, and that means anything. Is he going to turn it into a pizza karaoke place? Is he going to add pineapple on all the pizzas? Probably not. We're just at the beginning of the story, so you never know, but probably not. Tom had a vision for the business, and he was determined to make it a success. He started working crazy hours, not eating, barely sleeping, spending all his time in the restaurant, and eventually, he decided it was time to expand. He began eyeing up spots for a second Domino's. The only thing was, he needed someone to help him out. Enter John Gilmore. John Gilmore was a reformed alcoholic who had experience running a pizza restaurant of his own. Now at this stage, Tom was still pretty strapped for cash, so he agreed to sign away half of the business for just $500. $500 that Gilmore promised to pay later. Tom took over the new shop, leaving Gilmore to run the original Domino's. But very soon, Gilmore had racked up considerable debts. Eventually, Tom had to get lawyers involved to get out of the messy business arrangement. Needless to say, he never got those $500. On his own again, with 2 struggling businesses and a mountain of debt, Tom was advised to file for bankruptcy, but he was absolutely determined to make things work and flat out refused. So, how did he manage to go from a struggling small business owner to one of the most successful entrepreneurs of all time? The answer lies in innovation. Tom realized he needed to make some serious changes if he wanted to reach his goal of becoming a millionaire by the age of 30. The first thing he did was cut back the menu, drastically. So they offered one thing and one thing only, the 12-inch pizza. This allowed him to sling out pizzas faster with less costs. Then he got to work designing a new kind of delivery box that would keep the pizza hot for longer and allow it to travel better. By now, Tom had expanded to 3 stores, hence the 3 dots on the logo, and decided to rename the business. Remember that before this, it was called Domino's, which obviously sucked as a name. But the main issue was that it was trademarked. So after weeks of debating on a new name, Tom gets a eureka moment, and he renames it, you guessed it, Cheesy McCheeseface Pizzeria. Okay, no, he renames it Domino's Pizza, after a suggestion by his delivery driver. Around this time, profits started to trickle in, and Tom decided it was time to start franchising. Very soon, he was pushing for a new store to be opened every single week. Tom offered good deals to franchisees like low initial fees and royalties, which led Domino's to have 200 stores by 1978, each working with a centralized supply chain to make sure the quality stayed top-notch. By the time the 80s came around, Domino's was the fastest growing chain in the world, going from 300 to 5,000 stores, and everything was looking good, except for Tom's brother James struggling with deep shame and regret. But it couldn't just keep going great forever. Thankfully for this video, life threw a few challenges at Tom and his pizza empire. In the 80s, competition among pizza restaurants in the USA was fierce. While Domino's had been an early adopter of the delivery service, many other chains had since jumped on the bandwagon. That's when Tom came up with his 30 minutes or free guarantee.
Pizzas will be hot and fresh from the oven because Domino's Pizza delivers in less than 30 minutes.
You can count on our famous 30-minute delivery.
We guarantee your pizza will be delivered within 30 minutes.
This now infamous marketing campaign promised that Domino's would deliver your pizza to you in 30 minutes or less. Otherwise, you'd get your order completely free. And sure, in the beginning, this worked great. Sales were higher than ever, and Domino's became synonymous with speedy delivery. Until things started to take a pretty sinister turn. You see, so many drivers were rushing to make the 30-minute delivery time that a lot of accidents started happening. As the death toll rose, Domino's found itself the subject of a national investigation and many high-profile court cases, including one for $78 million. Public outrage, a wave of negative press, and the mounting legal fees eventually led to Tom scrapping the offer entirely and replacing it with a vague promise of fast delivery. But it wasn't the last time Domino's would find itself at the center of a scandal. Remember the nuns? Yeah, well, it turned out they had a pretty big effect on young Tom. As an adult, he became super conservative, devout Catholic, and donated to causes close to his heart. Sounds pretty innocent, right? Well, the problem was that the views Tom had close to his heart were pretty controversial. He funded campaigns to end abortions and even cancel a fundraiser that was due to take place on land owned by Domino's because the profits would help pro-choice charities. Of course, once the public got wind of this, they weren't too happy, which led to thousands of people boycotting Domino's in the late 80s. And if that wasn't enough, also around this time, Domino's was forced to scrap their mascot after a truly bizarre incident involving a schizophrenic man and a case of mistaken identity. You see, back in 1986, Domino's presented their brand new mascot, Noid, a mischievous, weird little rabbit in a skin-tight red suit. He was an overnight sensation and gave sales a real boost. That was until a mentally ill man named Kenneth Lamar Noid held 2 Domino's employees hostage at gunpoint. He was convinced that the new Domino's campaigns were directed at him, and so he burst into a Domino's in Georgia one day, demanding financial compensation and holding 2 terrified staff members there for over 5 hours. Noid demanded $100,000 and a white limousine as a getaway car, insisting on speaking directly with Domino's founder, our buddy Tom. He also demanded a copy of the novel The Widow's Son for some reason. Eventually, Noid got hungry and forced the captive employees to make him a couple of pizzas. While he was distracted eating, the hostages managed to escape unharmed. And once again, pizza saved the day. No one was hurt, but that was the end of the Noid. Until, of course, Domino's brought him back featuring in a new commercial, stuffed toys, t-shirts, and a video game. So, between the court cases, armed assault, and personal backlash against Tom, Domino's had pretty much seen it all. And in 1998, due to mounting public pressure, Tom Monaghan stepped down from his position in the company, selling his shares for $1 billion. This is around the time that Jim may have regretted his decision. The new CEO, named David Brandon, had a pretty huge task ahead of him. How do you take a once great brand that had spent the best part of a decade at the center of controversy, negative press, and high-profile lawsuits, and turn it around? Well, David gave it his best shot, and what happened next may be one of the greatest comeback stories of all time. One of the first things David did was launch a campaign called Pizza Turnaround. This was a radical move, the likes of which hadn't been seen before or since. Pizza Turnaround was a marketing campaign where instead of saying how great their pizzas were and how everyone should try them, Domino's basically said their pizzas were crap. Huh? Sounds counterintuitive. I know, but stick with me. By launching a campaign that featured comments from focus groups like "Worst pizza I ever had" and "The crust tastes like cardboard," Domino's acknowledged their own shortcomings and showed they were committed to changing things. They asked the public for feedback on their pizzas and launched a series of behind-the-scenes videos which showed them working on new recipes and cooking methods. Amazingly, the campaign worked. This uniquely transparent approach saw public trust towards the brand skyrocket, and it generated a load of really positive buzz. Around the same time, Domino's also invented the pizza tracker. This allowed people to track the progress of their order and know exactly when it was on their way to them. This may not seem like a big deal today, but it was unheard of at the time. This blend of clever marketing and investing in new technologies saw Domino's bounce back in a colossal way. And today, it's the largest pizza chain in the world, with roughly 17,000 stores in over 90 countries. Isn't it wild to think it all started with two broke orphans who could barely scrape together the down payment for the store? Despite some really low points, Domino's has managed to consistently beat the odds and hold on to its position as one of the most successful businesses of all time.